Hey Rochelle, I'm looking over your narrative lesson plans, and this one is the idea generation plan. And I think it moves along well, but I think it moves along a little too quickly, and I think you might have too many content ideas in there for the kiddos, and they may not know all the pieces you're talking about. And so I want to talk to you about slowing down a little bit and expanding some of these. So I noticed you chose 7th grade, and of course they'll know what personal narratives are. I think that's very reasonable. And then how to generate the story. So you want to work with them on planning strategies and engaging and orienting the reader. Those are our goals, okay? So let's look at the learning plan in particular, okay? You have them think about their favorite book or their movie and talk about what makes it their favorite. But then in your transition, you just say, today we're going to talk about what a narrative is. In narratives, you'll find that there's a protagonist and a goal, usually an obstacle or an antagonist. And instead of tying that directly back to these pieces, you just kind of move away from it. So think about making those transitions smooth in there, okay? All right, so you move into what is a protagonist and an antagonist, and that's good. And then you use a really common example, Harry Potter, and that works, okay? When you say this, I want you all to keep this formula in mind when you write your narrative. I like the fact that you had that differentiation piece. Sorry, I cruised right by it. This differentiation or piece right here, I don't know if it would be for everyone, but the picture that showed protagonist trying to get to goal, antagonist in the way, I like that. I think that visual representation will help rather than just being able to hold it in their mind. Now, this sentence right here, I want you all to write a story. Okay? That sentence is telling. You are telling the students that you have a desire, and your desire is for them to do all the work. Adolescents aren't going to take to that very well, right? We've talked about how reticent they are and kind of, their desire to push back is really blossoming in them. So instead of saying, I want you all to write a story, why don't you go with this idea, this great idea that you had up here? Why do societies tell stories? I guess just this one in general, right? Because that's a very different question to ask them, right? Why is it important to be a good storyteller? Why do all societies have stories that they tell? So that it helps them feel like they're part of this larger human context instead of the object of your direction, right? I want you to write a story. So think about the difference in that, okay? Here, we've got way too much going on. You want them to establish characters, setting, and conflict. They have to have more than one setting, 2 characters, and 1 conflict. Okay, that is like 3 lesson plans right there, okay? And then you add in a 4th. You can make your story any genre. This is the first time you've mentioned this word in this lesson plan, and if you want to use a content-specific word like genre with 7th graders, you better check it first. What are the different common genres? What are their typical characteristics of those genres? And why would you want to choose particular characters for a particular genre, right? What kinds of characters function inside of genres, right? We don't usually have a washed up cop in a fairy tale, okay? Like those washed up cops end up in mystery stories, okay? We usually don't have a psychotic killer in fairy tales. Those end up in mystery genres. So really discussing genre in and of itself is an entire mini lesson, okay? Here, when you start to work through your modeling, you say, I need to establish a genre. I'm going to make mine a mystery. First of all, I don't know all the characteristics of a mystery genre, and the kids need to know that. And second of all, I don't know what your criteria for your choice was. It seemed very random, and so they're going to be choosing very randomly, and that's a scary start, especially because you want to help these kids feel like they're part of this larger context, part of this larger society, this larger human condition that thrives on stories. Then think about the purpose for your story, and that's what leads you into genre, okay? Second, you say, I'll have 2 characters, 2 detectives. Again, seems very arbitrary. I chose 2 characters because you told me I had to choose 2 characters. because I at least need to have a protagonist and antagonist? I'm not really sure. Okay, so I want you, if you want to make this an appropriate think aloud, then you have to crack your head open and explain the criteria and the basis for making your decisions. Next, you say you want to describe characters in detail, and we need to do descriptive writing. That in and of itself can be an entire lesson plan. Do you see what I'm getting at? That right in here, you basically have the fodder for like 4 different lesson plans, I think. Painting a picture for a reader in descriptive writing, that's a really valuable revision lesson plan. And so slow down. Slow down in this and think carefully, okay? You say, think about painting a picture for the writer, for the reader. For example, I could say this, or I could say this. Can you tell me the difference between the two? One is describing, one's not. Okay, but I don't know why. I'm good enough to identify that this sentence is more descriptive than this sentence. But you know that identification is very low down on the Bloom's taxonomy. Being able to apply that knowledge to myself and being able to synthesize that knowledge into my own writing, that takes some pretty advanced skill and technique, and it takes some actual teaching instead of someone just saying, point to the one that's more descriptive. Oh, it's that one. Excellent, good. You need to, this in and of itself is an entire lesson plan right here. So again, I hope you see what I'm saying when I say slow down. How and why did you choose setting? Which settings are appropriate to which genres? Why did you choose the dark basement of an antique store? It seems like an arbitrary choice, but I don't want my kids to make arbitrary choices. Here you want to talk about conflict, and so you've bounced me back to the plot diagram idea, and you just took me out of setting, which took me out of descriptive writing. There's too much going on in this lesson plan, and there's too much of you telling, not showing your students what needs to be done. This is an insufficient check for understanding. Do you understand the pieces of the narrative I want you to think about? Nope, not going to work. You just threw way too many things at them. I don't know what the kids are supposed to be doing while you're doing this modeling. We bounce back and forth between character, setting, and plot. You threw in this word genre but didn't talk to me a lot about it. You said I got to have 2 characters, but I don't know if that means protagonist, antagonist, because I'm a 7th grade girl and I like to do everything about me and my best friend, which sounds just like protagonist and supporting character, right? Slow down. Think this through carefully, okay? Having kids come up with a second setting and a second character can mean many different things. This in and of itself is, if not a lesson plan, at least a mini lesson, okay? So slow down on these pieces. Give the kids some time to do some processing. Okay, so here's your second lesson plan where you have the kids drafting, and you've picked good evidence outcomes for this one. I think they're they're well chosen and very specific to what you're doing here. I like your global question, the importance of narratives to society, but I didn't see it actually used in your lesson plan, and I think it's a good enough question that getting it integrated might be a big help to you. Okay, in the learning plan, you go back to the same hook, thinking of a book or movie you like, and pre-guess the structure, and so that's good, right? And then I like your transition into that this time, that you'll teach you about structure so you can understand it, manipulate it. Providing students with a handout is some good differentiation there. Okay. This stretch right here is very good content knowledge for them, and I think that you present this knowledge very sequentially and very well. I worry that it would take you so long to get through this that the kids might get just a little bit bored, and so what would be the value in in introducing a piece and then looking at a narrative to model that piece or see a good model, and then introduce another piece, see a good model, another piece, see a good model, another piece, see a good model, so that the kids are moving back and forth from just like sitting and note taking into taking in a chunk of information and then identifying it somewhere. Take in a chunk, identify it somewhere. Take in a chunk, identify it somewhere. So then as you move them, you can move them from identification to application a little bit more smoothly, okay? All right. You have the model in here, so I know that you can do that flip-flop back and forth pretty easily. And then I like the model that you have here, and I really like that you discussed, right? So here's the model, and then you discussed. I added the complication first, then I introduced my characters. Here's why I did that. Now that's an effective think aloud that I really like, okay? Kick this up just one more little notch by asking your students to read this and then say, out of those 7 pieces above, which piece did I present first? Okay, good. Can you see it's the complication? Which piece was second? Okay, character. Now, why do you think I might have done that inside of this genre? Okay, so that you're really doing a better job then of kicking the talk time back and forth between you and your students. Look at this, try it out. Look at it, try it out. Why do you think? Try the answer. Why do you think? Try the answer. Okay, it's because otherwise it ends up, being kiddos sitting there for 30 minutes just listening. And, and you've been a student long enough to know how sometimes that's kind of boring. And especially if you're thinking about 7th graders, they're just going to straight up get squirrely on you, okay? But I like the rest of this lesson plan. The focus on structure, I think, is very well done. And this model right here, using the cat from the narrative, obviously I like that one. I gave that one to you, right? But I think that's also a really well done model too. Okay, so here's your 3rd lesson plan, the one on revision. This evidence outcome, you did work on vividness of voice, but I really didn't see you address any tone. And this one, you worked on language that was descriptive, but not necessarily precise and concise. And I don't feel like anything that you did focused on recognizing and eliminating wordiness and redundancy. So these may not be the best, either A, the best choice of evidence outcomes for your lesson plan, or B, the lesson plan needs to kick itself up a notch to meet and to rise to these standards. Okay. Let me show you some places where I think you could do that. So you have them experienced before we label. You read 2 obviously distinct readings, and I like this one better because it's descriptive. Okay, good. So then you say, when we write a narrative, we want to show, don't tell. One way to do this is by thinking about the verbs. I want you to focus on action and sensing verbs, okay? Everything that you provide here are actually just synonyms, okay? Stumbled for fell, pondered for thought, exclaimed for said. So if I know some big fancy words and some synonyms, I listen to this lesson plan and I go, oh, okay, I can do that. And if I don't know some fancy big words and synonyms, I listen to your lesson plan and I get a little concerned that I'm not going to be able to be successful on this because I don't know how to do those things. I don't know where to access those skills. I don't know all of those words. And so just providing models for them without a concrete strategy about how to go about finding the verbs in their sentences, first of all, and then second of all, choosing synonyms for those verbs, okay? And I've got to tell you, honestly, that doesn't necessarily rise to the level of the evidence outcome that you chose. Now you talk about putting verbs in a consistent tense. Again, you have not addressed what verbs are or how to find a verb in a sentence. And if you want this to be a grammar mini lesson, you need to make it as such. You say present tense, you add an S to the verb. She ponders. Except for irregular verbs, past tense, add an ED. Except for irregular verbs, future tense, you need to use will or shall before the verb. Will ponder. Okay? Okay, so you just threw a whole lot of information about me that's a little grammar mini lesson, and this is all you talking at the kids. I don't know what the kids are supposed to be doing, if they're supposed to be note-taking or you have guided notes for them, and you didn't do any Q&A. This was all delivered via lecture, and that's not going to be the most effective format for teaching 7th graders. Okay? Now you move on to being descriptive doesn't always involve verbs. It involves making a conflict more descriptive. But I didn't have any time as a student to sit with this verb idea for a little bit and use it. Like, teach them what verbs are, teach them where to find the verbs, have them go in and circle their verbs and have them work together with a partner and a thesaurus, if that's what you want them to do, as synonyms, and work on those. Then you can move into another piece of direct instruction. Otherwise, you're doing too much direct instruction right up front, and the kids are going to completely ignore the verb stuff. They'll forget it in favor of this stuff here, okay? You say that you want to look at a story and analyze if an author's descriptive, but really in the end, you didn't do any analysis at all. You read it out loud to them, and then you just said what words or phrases stand out to you. These are the answers you're looking for here, and you say, I can feel what the author is feeling by his use of words like clammy and shake. That's not an analysis. Again, that's just identification of action verbs. Or phrases, okay? Slow down in this stuff. Be willing, Rochelle, to write 5 lesson plans in place of the 3 so that you can delve deep, so that you can become the teacher that teaches the students how to do these things and gives them those concrete strategies and those steps, instead of just being a high-level writer who kind of rips out these stories and these examples off the top of your head and then says to the students, do you get it? Okay, go ahead and do it. Which is right what you do here. It's just too intimidating to kids, okay? I like the fact that you have people getting together with a partner and reading, but they also need to process their own text. So have them doing the verb thing, do the verb instruction, break and look at their writing, circle their verbs, okay? Have them do descriptive writing and then have them do this piece right here, okay? So think about being a 7th grader, think about being 12 years old and not feeling super great about your writing skills, and see if you can really kind of tailor your way towards those kinds of students, all right?